You're listening to Releasing Trauma, a survivor's podcast. And now here's your host, Tracy Osborne. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today, we are talking about filling up your confidence gas tank. Something that so many of us struggle with, especially as trauma survivors. So joining me today is Graig Robinson, and he is going to help us boost our self-esteem, figure out who better than you, create positive relationships and all kinds of good stuff. So Graig, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for having me. I think this is an amazing topic. So,
no, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. So, I guess let's just get started with one of the things that trauma survivors deal with most often is a lack of self-worth and self-esteem and confidence, especially those who have been in childhood abuse, domestic violence, sexual abuse, those kinds of situations. We just get beat down so much that oftentimes we begin to feel like we aren't worthy and that we deserve the way we're being treated, which is totally not true. So, Graig, what are some of your tips and thoughts around going from, feeling like you're bottom of the barrel, scum of the earth to, just feeling like you're on top of the world?
That's the funny thing about trauma. So I have this saying, Tracy, and it's a big one, and it's a mantra of mine, right? What does trauma turn into when it's cultivated and it's processed in a healthy fashion? It turns into wisdom. So trauma is wisdom in its infancy. And that's kind of the way that I look at a trauma.
I like that.
Because I'm a very big believer that we are in control, of our universe, and we are in control of our truth and our reality. Right now, there's so many steps to this. It's such an intricate thing, and there's so much self-work that has to be done around your self-wealth, how you value yourself. And so there's different gateways to trauma. When we start talking about trauma, I think in each one of them, the first step to resolving them is going to be different for each gateway. But for a gateway, when we're dealing with the gateway of child molestation, abuse, domestic violence, sex trafficking, things of that nature. Whenever we're dealing with those gateways, the first thing you have to do, in my own personal opinion, remember, this is just my opinion. These are the things that I subscribe to. And the first thing that you have to do in those situations is stop blaming yourself. When it comes to child abuse, when it comes to child molestation, when it comes to rape, when it comes to sex trafficking, when it comes to these atrocious crimes against another human that completely violates the white light inside of them, there is nothing you could have done different. There was nothing that you did to contribute to it. There is no way to make it right. There is no way to erase it, and it is not the end of your story. You've got to make peace with those avenues first. It happened, right? And for all that it's worth, it can't unhappen. And there's nothing that you did, and it didn't devalue you. It didn't deflate your value and your self-value in the world marketplace, in the human marketplace. Its power is going to be as much as you give it. My grandmother used to tell me when I was a child, in this world and in this life, you will find any and all things that you seek. So with that said, it's all about how you perceive it, your perception and your reality. And I think the biggest thing is making sure that in the healthiest way possible, that you channel all of the energy in the universe to understand that it's not your fault. And it happened. It's not your fault. There's nothing that you could have done different. You're not a contributor to that. I'm sorry, my fur baby is bananas back here. You probably hear storm across the room. You're not a contributor to that. And there is no sentiment that changes that narrative. And being able to make peace with that. Right there, I often say to people, and I think sometimes it's overlooked. Even in being a victim, there's so much power.
Yeah, we don't see it, we don't feel it, we don't realize it. For sure. I love how you said you can't make it unhappen. I mean, that's a gem right there. And it's fact. No matter how much you could wish that it didn't happen to you, no matter how much you wish this, that, or the other, play the what if games, all of that, you can't make it unhappen. It happened, but it doesn't define who you are, your trauma. Trauma is what happened to you. It's not who you are. And that's one of the biggest things, that we have to realize is that we are not defined by our traumas. And so many of us do define ourselves. We're a survivor. We're domestic abuse survivors. We're sexual assault survivors. And yes, we are survivors, but that's not who we are.
It's a role.
Yes.
Just like you're a wife, just like you're a husband, just like you're a mom, just
exactly.
like you're a nephew, a child. It's a role, right? And I think where your perception meets your reality becomes a strong thing, because you can say this journey has so many rabbit holes, right? But there's 3 different ways that you can line that up, even from that standpoint, because now that we've accepted it and we've empowered the end result, because that's the biggest thing. Once we can make peace with that and we've accepted it, now we can empower the good work. And the universe is going to pay you dividends. I say this all the time. The universe pays residuals 360. So if we put the good work out there, we're going to get 360% return on that. I believe it 100. And that's in all things. That's why you also have to be mindful and balance the bad, because it's going to pay you 360. But once we move there and we can move to that next step, and for everybody it's different, but I've come a long way. I've had things happen to me in my life. I've had some unspeakable things happen that for a long time, me not embracing the feminine side of my masculinity, I had a very hard time even uttering the words and regurgitating that those things had happened, because it spoke so much against society's norm of how I'm judged inside of my gender role. Sure. But then you remember, you start understanding that in mastery, you are the hand that molds the future for yourself. You're that hand. And you move from the space of I am a victim. So I'm a victim of an atrocious act. And then you go from I'm a survivor of a atrocious act. And that's not the top of the mountain. That's not the peak of Mount Everest. Then it turns into I am a champion and an ambassador of. Right? Mm-hmm. And when you get to that third realm, that's a level of mastery. I am an ambassador of prevention of child abuse. I am an ambassador of domestic violence awareness. And then there's a step after that, right? I am an ambassador of resolution to these things. I am a thought leader of resolution. I am a thought provoker of resolution to these things, right? A leader, an authority of not just my world, but of anyone who wants to navigate these troubled waters, anyone who wants to climb Mount Everest for this trauma, behind me is the way. I can show you how. I can take all of the chaos and organize it and make it healthy. And that is where we start going from Now it's met its maturity, right? That's when to groom a butterfly happens, right?
Right.
Now we are, it's no longer a trauma. It's wisdom.
Mm.
That's
I
when
like
you
that.
met your
I like that a
maturity.
lot.
That's when the situation has met its maturity. Is when and now it's evolved. And think about how ugly those things are, but that's how things transcend. Think about how ugly some of those acts are. But when you get to when it matures and it manifests itself into wisdom through the work that you've done, Tracy, how beautiful is wisdom?
It's amazing. It's breathtaking. And I think that is the stage when we hit that level. That's when our traumas truly hold no power over us.
110%. Because the way that the universe plays itself, in my own personal opinion, Tracy, even for you, right? I'm sure you've become the great ambassador, because I'm a fan. I did some digging. I watched some different videos and some of the different content and thought leadership and thought-provoking subjects that you guys are touching. And I love it because you guys are talking about the things that nobody wants to talk about. And for me, okay, so I'm just weird. I'm just driven different. My programming, I'm so plugged into the world, into the universe in a different way. It's the things that nobody wants to talk about. Those are the most beautiful conversations to me, right? But it all served its purpose inside of the algorithm of the universe that created you today. Without that trauma, you wouldn't be here as you are today.
Truth.
There wouldn't be the thought-provoking and thought leadership that good work that you're doing. No matter what you subscribe to, if you subscribe to a religion and theology, then the Lord's work wouldn't be getting done. If you subscribe to metaphysics in the universe, then Source's work would not be getting done. Then Buddha's work would not be getting done. Without it, the beautiful outcome, it all has its purpose. And that's why I'm very big on perception meeting reality, because in this life, you will find anything that you seek. So what you make of it is what is going to be. But I think for a lot of those victims, a big thing, Tracy, is they struggle to make it beautiful. And you've got to find a way to make it beautiful, because without it, there would be no wisdom. Without it, there would all the beautiful things that you ascended to, there would have been no ascension. So, my wife, and she's probably going to get mad for me telling this story, but it's okay, because it's going to reach out and it's going to help someone. She went through a spot in her life after her dad died, big time daddy's girl. We all know how devastating losing a parent could be, and to lose a dad, it's never a good time. It's the same premise of child, like having children. So there's never a good time to have a child. If you wait for a good time, my grandma used to tell me all the time, if you wait for a good time to have children, you're never gonna have any. So there's never a good time to lose a loved one. There's never a good time to lose a parent. And there was a time where she was just in a hard spot with herself, and a hard space with religion, and a hard space with the universe, all as a residual of her losing her dad. And I had to stop her one day, and I had to tell her, she was just having a hard time finding the value in anything in life because of that, and just questioning so much. It was a huge trauma for her. And I literally, whether she wanted to hear it or not, I had to stop her and tell her, but honey, I need you to put things in perspective. You're not giving enough power to the beautiful things that have happened in your life after that. And I want you to understand something. For every little nuance that changes in the universe, the outcome of everything changes. And without the trauma, and without you going through the hardship of your dad, and him going to the next realm, and him leaving you here in the physical, but not leaving you in spirit and in legacy. Without those things occurring, and they're ugly, see, your story now would be completely different. And your outcome now would be completely different. if you really sit back and put it in chronological order, there are so many things down to our children, down to me meeting you as your husband, our professional success in our career. Those things happen as a residual of the trajectory of your father leaving this realm. And had he not left this realm, we don't know beyond the shadow of a doubt that all of those other wonderful things that have happened for you would have occurred. It's all a residual. It's all a trickle down. If some of the trauma that I went through, Tracy, if some of the trauma that you went through, had we not went down those paths, there's no saying that there's no guarantee anywhere in the universe that we be in the positions that we are today, because it all plays a part in now.
It would most likely not be.
110%.
I can't fathom thinking that I would have gone down the path of, trauma coaching and being an advocate for domestic violence victims and sexual assault victims. And if I hadn't experienced it myself, because otherwise it's, yes, it's a terrible thing. Nobody should ever go through it. But if you haven't experienced it yourself, you don't truly get it. And it's difficult to advocate for something you don't truly get.
110%. And it's difficult to advocate for something that you didn't experience.
Exactly.
I can, under different premise, but I can't advocate for any forms of child labor because I've never given birth to a child. I can, from a premise of what I believe, what I subscribe to, what I think is right, with what me and in all my subject matter expertness and all the research and data that I've done, and I still can't advocate for it like a mother can, a woman who's given birth to 5 children and now has become an advocate for an alternative form or method of childbirth. I can't advocate for it the way that person is going to. For battered women, abused wives, I can advocate for it from a moral compass perspective, from an efficacy perspective. I can advocate for it from a litigation perspective. I cannot navigate it from a position, the same position that someone, a woman who's a survivor, and now she's an ambassador and a thought leader against battered wives and battered mothers. I can't. You can't fill those shoes. And right now in life, if I walk down the street and I go down this beaten path, I can only tell you as far as I can see down that path if I've never walked it before. So I can tell you, hey, Tracy, there's 2 stop signs, 3 oakwood trees, a feral cat, and some ducks. But that's the extent. That's what I can see with my eyes. I can't tell you what that environment is against the path I've ever traveled. So it's finding the silver. I know some people say, you have to find the silver lining and things, but it's so much deeper than that. I know that I'm very eccentric in the way that I go about things, but it's so much deeper than that, Tracy. I think we spend so much time as humans never really truly understanding that there's beauty in all things, all of it. That's why I'm such a big advocate for all of it is beautiful. See, it's all beautiful to me. All of it is beautiful. And in me being able to say that all of it is beautiful, because beauty is in the eyes of the beholder in all things in life. So to me, all of it is beautiful down a path of resolve. Once you started working towards a resolution, and once you started working towards a productive new outcome, then how can you say anything other than it's beautiful? I see you've been through what you've been through, and you've had your trauma, Tracy, and we could grow on it if you're comfortable with it. But you know what I see? I see a beautiful human being now. I see a radiant and illuminated, beautiful soul, right? In the level of sainthood, doing its best to Tracy, doing your best.
Wouldn't go that far.
I would, because when you look at saints, what did saints do? They were an advocate for the parishes that they governed.
True.
A saint or prophetess of fertility was an advocate for the parishes that they governed. Right.
You heard it,
and
listeners. You can now refer to me as Saint Tracy.
Saint Tracy. I like that. That's it. And they did it. Mother Teresa. She did her work from a place of servitude, right? That was a beautiful thing. We could talk about her ascension and all of these different things. We know that she came, she saw, she conquered, and we know that she was born and she died. That was of human flesh, right? And all of the beautiful work that she did in the meantime and between time was from a selfless place, right? Her work for children, her work against poverty, her work for women in general, for the human and mankind race in general. And she did that in the flesh, right? So, once we get to our subscriptions, how we're going to subscribe to things, and once we set that in stone and we do that hard work, how can you not say it wasn't beautiful, right? And all things that are beautiful, the story behind the molding of it does not mean that is beautiful. Oh, some of it. I look at a cake, Tracy. When you take the raw ingredients of cake, is it beautiful? No, it's yeast, right? It's flour, it's egg, extracts. And when you put it all in the pot before you put the blender on it, oh gosh,
right?
It looks like something none of us would ever eat.
Yep.
But when it's all said and done, and the work is done, and that cake is baked, and the preparation for that baked cake is done, and that cake is dressed, and grandma puts it in her cake dish, her glass one, to be displayed by anybody who walks to the kitchen. It's beautiful, right? And it tastes so amazing. But each one of its raw components, if you took some of the baking soda that was used to make that flour rise, that doesn't taste good at all. 2 teaspoons of salt doesn't taste good at all. The 2 raw eggs that she cracked in it, oh no.
Yep.
The end result after the work is done, it's all beautiful. And that allows us not to alienate or marginalize the things that we've been through in order to get to the beauty. The act in itself, the acceptance of things, the forgiveness of the villain in the situation, the understanding their limitations and how they were hurt and how they were because we are all born a shell. I'm a huge subscriber to we're not born evil.
Agreed.
Right. So I think it's a big thing. I think this is a huge arena. And I think in this where we are in society today, Tracy, we spend way too much time on the process of identification, right? So we want to cancel something. We want to depower, demonetize something. We don't spend enough time talking about the narrative that you wanted to talk about today, the work, right? We spend so much time on the instant gratification. Cancel it, demonetize it, lock it away, put it, shock it to death, gas chamber it, abolish it. No, let's process it and deal with it and then educate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're so hung up on labeling it as well. We have to label everything. And there are things in life that just don't need a label.
Labelless.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Because sometimes I think a lot of times the labels empower things in the wrong way.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we don't have it today in today's world. We don't have a healthy process of how we go about labeling. And because in order for you to truly label something, you've got to deal with it, not cancel it, not demonetize it, not stuff it away, not strike a black or red marker across it. You got to deal with it. My grandfather used to tell me, son, the only thing that begots anything is the very thing that you started with. So the only thing that begots change is change. The only thing that begots conflict resolution is to resolve the conflict. The only thing that begots growth is to grow. Right? Yeah. So the only thing that's going to make labeling the right thing to do or the healthy thing to do. We speak so much about healthiness, about whether something is toxic or not. The only way for us to effectively label something is going to be to resolve it, to deal with it, right? To process it in order to label it, to process it and accept the results of said processing, regardless if it meets our expectation, reality, or conventional ways of thinking. From a place of almost impartialness, it is what it is: wrong, right, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. And now that it is what it is, and it happened now, how it happened, we have to get outside of our moral compass and allow it to be what it is. Not try to process whether it's wrong, right, or indifferent. Just with the presence of mind and self that it happened.
Yep.
Because if we let the moral compass come into that process too early, then it's a misappropriation of the label. You're labeling it based upon how it struck you in your conventional methods of thinking, not what it is. A lot of times now we're labeling it because someone in your past, someone in your life, a pivotal person in your life told you that that's what that is. We haven't actually processed it. That's how you really feel about it. A lot of people, a lot of children, a lot of adults believe in God because their grandmothers and their great-grandmothers told them so, told them that that was the thing to do, told them that that was the only way to their salvation. It's not what they so whether we haven't actually processed whether or not they truly subscribe to it. We just know, here's what we do know that they subscribe to, that when it comes to their elders, they do as they're told.
Yep.
Right. And it's the same thing with our traumas. It's all about how we're going to subscribe to the end result of it. Are we going to, everyone around you, I right now am a victim of some type of sexual assault. From the time I hit the hospital, from the time I get in the ambulance, from the time the police arrive, everyone around me is telling me what it is. I still in my mind haven't had a chance to process what I believe to be what happened. Everyone is telling you what it is, and they're telling you their opinions and their thoughts on it. It's a crime. It's wrong. You've been wrong. We know that those things are true. I understand that. But this is what the police are telling me, the paramedic is telling me. When we get at the hospital, the practitioners that are seeing, all I'm hearing right in my universe now is their interpretation of it. Right. No one has asked me as of yet what I thought it was and how they speak from a place of sentiment. I know that this is hard for you. I know that you are hurt. I know that this has changed your life forever. So thank you for subscribing to me that it hurts, and because it does. That's normal, healthy feelings. Thank you for acknowledging that something has happened to me. I needed to hear that too. Here's what I did not need. I don't need you manifesting that it's going to change my life forever in a negative way. Stop saying that. Let me process it first. Stop putting that out there. The power of the tongue. Every practitioner that comes in the room is going to put that out there. Dr. Deceased is going to put that out there. The detective, they're all going to come. And that's the one thing I wish that we stop. I really want us to stop doing. Just that one carrot. Oh, it's going to, I know that this has changed your life. Stop it. Don't put that in the universe. Let me. Let Don't do that to me. Let me process it and determine what it's going to do to me forever. That's not healthy. Don't do that. We spend so much time with that, right? We spend so much time, even with in all things in life, manifesting for others what their outcome is going to be. Let's not do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Let's just take that time and say, Tracy, where are you at with it right now?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. We have to let each person process and make their own decisions on how life is going to affect them, for sure. Mm-hmm. Graig, this has been awesome. Thank you so much. I know we could keep talking, but I'm like, we're out of time.
Oh, well, most certainly. I'm a chatterbox, so forgive me for
no
that.
Worries. No worries.
I do want to leave you with this, Tracy, but now I want to ask you a really good question, two of them.
Sure.
So after you release the trauma, I think that a very strong conversation for us is how do you mold that into your weapon for advocacy?
That's a good question. For me, once I was able to release the trauma and get to the point where it no longer had power over me, that's when I am able to speak and be more effective, because I am no longer powerless against my traumas. So I have that strength, I have the voice, and I am able to speak for those who aren't there yet or who can't ever get there.
I think, that's awesome, Tracy. And I think that that's something that I don't see enough conversation going on about that. How do, after you release trauma, I don't see enough conversation going on about releasing trauma, but then there's the work that has to be done after that. There's so much. Yep. And after you release that trauma, how do you turn it into your sword and shield of advocacy and power going forward, right? How do you take it and mold it into, mold it into Thor's hammer, right? How do you take it in and mold it into David's slingshot?
Yep, exactly.
Right? I think that's a good thing. And I think that's an amazing thing. I think that's something that we have to start talking about. And after you get to the other side of that, I'm just going to ask you before I let you go, Tracy, how do you begin to process and understand that now that you've released that trauma and you've molded it into that weapon for advocacy and your sword and your shield, now we have to start working on the other side of it. When do you start embracing and looking at the human in the mirror and making sure that every day you ask that person, now, in my new form, in my new skin, in my new role, who is better than I? Who's better than you at that? In that now, that mentality. That now I am going to be the greatest to do this, the best to do it. There's no one better than me. I have the utmost confidence and self-esteem, and it's not, and my actions are going to match my rhetoric. I am going to change the narrative, not just for me, but for others in regards to my sword and my shield now. My wisdom my trauma has evolved itself into wisdom, and I've taken the release trauma and I have formed and molded and beat away at a beautiful, shiny sword and shield for my advocacy. And now there is no one better than me. I am at the top of the mountain, and I am going to bring as many people here to that peak as I possibly can, until I can create an army of advocacy and work down every avenue, down every level, and down every pillar to have a permanent impact on this. I am going to be the legacy and the champion of the other side of it all in the most beautiful way. Absolutely.
I like that. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, that's a very powerful way to leave and to wrap things up. So again, Graig, thank you so much for joining us today.
Tracy, thank you for having me and letting me ramble a bit about something that meant a lot to me.
No worries. No worries. Listeners, as always, I will have all of Graig's information in the show notes. Just go to releasingtraumapodcast.com, pull up his episode, and everything will be there for you. And thank you always. I can't ever thank you enough for tuning in and listening. If you're listening from your favorite podcast app, make sure you give us a like and a follow and a share and all that good stuff. And we'll talk to you in the next show.
That's awesome. Thank you, guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks for tuning in. Be sure you hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss a show. Be sure to check us out on our new socials on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.